Okay, in this video, I'm going to discuss creating a merger model, a merger of two companies. Okay, and the central point of this merger, this discussion, will be the construction of the thorough understanding, really, of a sources and uses analysis, as well as some how much you're really paying for a company. Now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do in this model. I'm going to show. I'm just going to use an exercise that I was going to make for a class, and I never did. Okay, and I'm going to start by just talking about some assumptions and perhaps talk a little bit about what you'd like out of the merger. Now, I've got to warn you that this model itself, we're going to change, and I'm going to change in a subsequent video to demonstrate how you could take two models. Here is the model of the acquiring company, and if you watched some of my earlier videos, which I doubt you did because I suspect the number of views will be like one, but this has the financial model of the acquiring company, including the initial balance sheet, working through the assumptions on operations, working capital, depreciation, financing, coming up with a profit and loss, a cash flow, and a balance sheet. Finally, some financial ratios. And then we have the financial model of the company that's the target company. And it could be in any form, doesn't matter if the years are in a different place or anything like that. Okay. Uh, and what we're going to do is put those two companies together in a merger model. Now, when you put those two companies in a merger model, it's kind of like a single model. You need to just begin with some kind of balance sheet. Now, this balance sheet you begin with, that's a pro forma balance sheet that includes both companies. So I'm sorry about kind of moving back and forth, but in this case, I really don't know how else to do it. So here's the pro forma balance sheet that takes the balance sheet of two companies and works backwards through a goodwill analysis and a sources and uses analysis. So that's the general structure. You have to make some general kind of assumptions. I'm pressing Shift Control C on the merger, and okay, let's make this some kind of how about a purple color? Okay, and then the merger model will also make it all sorts of different horrible colors. I'm sorry about my horrible art things. Okay, so once if you, let's make one more for the transaction structure. Okay, and what we'll do is just show you where all these things kind of come from. This is stupid wasting some time on this. Okay, so when we go to Shift Control C on this one, okay, you can see where I'm just kind of showing you, I hope. Of course, this comes from generic macros in case you haven't been looking at the other crap. In this generic macros, there's a if you want to look at the macro that made this, you go to macros and it's called color sheets from color create link tab, and you can look and see how it works. And it was frankly a little bit more painful to make than some of the other macros. Okay, so we've got our pro forma balance sheet, and then we get our revenues just from hopefully from the profit and loss statement. And the way I do this is to kind of use a match statement. So this is the first period, and then you notice that each model has a kind of different one, and then together with the match, you just put an index in, and get it straight from the financial statements really, and then we put all the kind of same key elements that you would in a standalone model, including revenues and the admin expenses and the depreciation and the working capital. This time in the merger model, you just kind of put it all together. Okay, and finally, if you have some well, I just computed the net plant. If you have some depreciation write-up, do you see that? That's from the whatever, it's some kind of purple model assumption. And then once we have that, then we redo the financing. Now to redo the financing, notice I left a few yellow things just so we can do a little bit of analysis. And finally, you get the profit and loss and the cash flow and the balance sheet from a combined analysis. Okay, so let's just do some of the exercise that I suggested we do. Okay, let's start by understanding the transaction. This was I don't know what you'd call it. They tried to do a fancy transaction. We had some cash to this target company, which was Coletta. But then they also paid him some shares. And the reason they did it this way is they wanted to make sure that the shares that this new person owned were not more than the original shares that the first person owned. So the first person originally owned 75%, and then he ended up owning 41%. Now we can put the percentage owned by Coletta. Okay, and then that would be Coletta shares divided by these shares. So giving him too many shares, there was a danger of you think you're buying his company and then he's just buying your company. So you want to give him some cash. Now, the other thing that was tricky is they made this transaction in two parts. This was also tricky. Depending on how you value the shares, there's going to be a big difference in some statistics. Okay, and they also paid some existing for some cash for some of the assets in about a month before the transaction. I called that part of the transaction. Excuse me. Oh God, that cash is going to go into the pocket of Coletta. Now, part of the transaction also was to buy a couple of planes that this Coletta man committed to. In fact, that's probably the biggest reason for the transaction, is this guy ran out of money. And then there was some transaction fees. 16 million. Let's just see what 16 million really means. 16 million is, they had, this acquiring company had 65 million to start with. Um, if we also look at this standalone company, 16 million, if you look just a couple of years before, uh, they earned, oh my God, this is kind of a joke. They earned 4 million, 4 million, 4 million. Did I get that right? Yeah. That was their net income. I shouldn't have laughed. Sorry. That wasn't that funny. But 16 million is a lot of money. I just have to put that in my write-up. Uh, uh, and then to get money for this, well, here was the other trick. If they didn't want to dilute the shares too much, so they got 41 million from new share issues. And so now if you make this, we'll put the share price assumptions up here. Now if they have a lower share price, they get a whole lot less shares, and it affects the dilution. And then the big one was that they were going to issue two tranches of debt, 340 million and 445 million. Now just to show you how much debt this was, if you look at the standalone company again here, let's look at their balance sheets. 340 million. Their whole assets were 130 million. So much of this is just financing the other company. Sorry. Okay. And they also initially had some debt on their balance sheet. 26 million here. Not much else. No revolving credit. A little bit of current debt here. That will all have to be repaid. Okay. And I've got a phone call. Just a minute. Okay. Let me see. I got this conference call. Or had this call, so I don't know where I was. Oh, this is the repayment of the debt, and then this is the debt that they had to retire. So, what we're going to do in this analysis is just show you how to structure a merger analysis from these kind of assumptions. In a second video, we're going to go through something more even fundamental. Let's say that we have two new scenarios and we just want to put all this together. So this kind of has it together. Now what you can just do is go and get here's the cash consideration. Here's how much we paid in shares. And of course I already did the cash consideration. Well, I put the asset purchase as a separate one. So the first step is to see how much you paid for the merger. Then you're also going to have to pay these crazy fees. Oh my God. And then we're going to have to pay some money to retire the debt. Now, in this case, when they retired the debt, they also had a breakage fee on the debts. And I forgot what I did. Fees for the debt retire. I call that a fee. And we could amortize that fee over the remaining life of the new debt, and then we have to also buy the new planes. Okay, which are this. So this, it was kind of a reasonably, for me, figuring out what they're actually paying for and where they're getting the money is such a central part of all this. And the first thing they did is they had some, here's the value of the shares that was issued. So, oops, I'm sorry. This is the new debt that they issued. And then we have the new term loan that they issued. And then we have the new shares that they issued to the public that depends on the share price. And that was this one. And finally, we have the new shares that they did in essentially a stock exchange. I'd really kind of call this a stock swap or something. And then here that we have net working capital as the sum of all this stuff minus this. So I should have, this. Why don't we put the subtotal of the uses and add all of those together, and then we'll put a subtotal of the sources. And put all of those together. And so we have more uses than sources. So what we have to do is, I assume though, if we put this difference here, then the sources equal the uses, and we can sum up this, and we can sum up this. Okay, we should really understand exactly what happened to the cash. I don't know what happened here, and they didn't even publish this. Now, if you really go through this, what we could do at the end of the day is put some transaction multiples. And credit statistics. Now, to come up with these is very tricky. We need to come up with how much the EBITDA is and what the earnings are and all this stuff. Now, at the same time here, what I did next is use some matching index. So we said, well, let's take this title, merger model, C10, excuse me, C10. So this is how we kind of restructured the whole balance sheet. All right. I don't know why I put it there. Could have used these. And then we can find the row number in the this is the row number in the KH standalone model. This is the row number in the other model. And then we can use an index to just plop in our balance sheet, hopefully. It depends, of course, entirely on how you've labeled the balance sheet items. And hopefully it's probably worth relabeling the balance sheet items. Now, once you have the sources and uses together with goodwill, let me finish this. Oh, I'm sorry. So the transaction multiples. We'd put in, well, let's put our EBITDA, and let's put our equity consideration. Now, I'm just going to make the EBITDA, this is only for the target, I'm going to make that about 75 million. This is an enormous issue because this company had a real financial problem. Its EBITDA was low. How should we normalize the EBITDA to get it all right? So the consideration is maybe the sum of it's not maybe, it is the sum of this. And we can put the fees so we could put the total plus the fees. Okay, and then so we'll put total. I don't know, whether you should really put the fees in or not. Excuse me. Doesn't really matter. So let's put a sum here, and then we have the then we can put the net, the bridge, EV to equity bridge, which is net debt. Okay, and that, let's get the well, we have the debt retired, and the debt retired, we actually have the net debt of that we're going to have to pay for of Coletta. Now, any cash they had, I'm going to assume that they just took that out themselves, and what we really should do is also look and see, well, let's look on the balance sheet. Is there any kind of thing that shouldn't be in the equity, in the enterprise value? So for Coletta, there's not much cash left. Oh, this restricted cash, why don't we we'll assume that that's still on there. They have some other assets. These are minor, but we could make some adjustments for the other assets. If there's some of this deferred tax liability, which is really other liabilities, you might want to call that debt. I don't know. I just babbled on just now. So, but let's just leave it like this. Let's put this minus the cash. And the reason it seems to be going backwards a little bit, and that means we don't want to pay that cash they had on the balance sheet. That's not associated with the EBITDA. Okay, now once we have this, then we can compute a couple of ratios. So the EV to EBITDA is the first one. Now I am, this number can mean so much. It looks like, oh, we're only paying 3 times EV to EBITDA. That's not bad. But now let's put the price to book. So I guess we should also move this and put a, oh shit, just a minute. Okay, so here's what, we can also put the book value of the equity, or the equity book value. Okay, so the equity book value for the target company is this, 35 million, and then we get a little bit of a different story, because the total consideration divided by the equity value is 5 times. Why in the heck did I do that right? Why would you pay for a company that's just about bankrupt 5 times their book value? Why not just let them go bankrupt and pay the debt? That's the real issue in the whole case. And this EV to EBITDA, well, that depends. If they only get 50,000 EBITDA, then we're paying a little more. It still doesn't seem like you're paying that much. If it's only 20,000, then you're paying a whole lot. But even, whatever, you see the point. Did I put 75,000? Okay, so, and then we can also get now in this case, we don't really have the net income, so we can't get the implied PE ratio. If you look at this, in fact, if you look at the standalone model here, in the very last year, let me see what they had. EBITDA was only 21,000, so this was definitely had a lot of adjustments to get to the other one, the CapEx, whatever. I don't know why I just said that. and the net income. Oh, they did have it. Oh, this is. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong model. The EBITDA for. Oh, just a minute. Why did I? Oh, here they had the adjusted EBITDA of only 16 million. But they had 53 million before, so maybe it would have gone up, and they had a net loss. It was very hard to compute these ratios. In fact, another ratio that I think you could do is you could perhaps make a ratio called enterprise value. I mean invested capital, which is let's just take the equity value plus the net debt, essentially. And we can put here, then we can, instead of doing the price to book, we could compute the enterprise value to the invested capital. Why? People don't even talk about this. I think some guy won a Nobel Prize for it, but why wouldn't we talk about Tobin's Q? My God, why wouldn't you compute this? It's such a simple one. You just take the EV. Hang on. I must have done this last one wrong. So, see, this should have been plus the oh God. Okay, we should have added the debt, which was here, minus the restricted cash, perhaps. I still got wrong. Enterprise value. Oh, this I didn't add in the total consideration. That's pretty bad. So we have higher EV to EBITDA, and our enterprise value to invested capital is this, which for me is an enormously interesting, important thing. So it says this company paid for planes, and you're in the merger paying 47% more than what they paid for the planes. Now maybe they're older planes and the value of the planes went way up, but that's what you're really buying. So you start to get some kind of insight, hopefully, from these numbers. Now let's just finish this little thing. So once we have these, we can get all of our adjustments to the balance sheet. All of these come from either this goodwill, which is taking the consideration, how much you're paying for the company, subtracting the equity, getting the increase. And we look at how we increased the plant and other assets. This came straight from their kind of financials. And then we see how much fees you were capitalized. Now these days, these would all have to be expensed. I'm not going to do that right now. So all we do, we start putting these changes in. So our net plant went up. Our other assets, they went up. Our goodwill was this number. Our cash, what happened to the cash? The cash, that was in the sources of funds. So we used cash. Now, how about this? I'll put a minus on the restricted cash now. I suppose. And then now we can start with the liability side, and we put the existing debt, just put an equal and a minus. And that again comes straight from the sources and uses statement. How much debt went down, and then you can put the new debt issued. And what I would do is, you noticed I included a separate little category for the new note issued. and then the new term loan. Okay, and then here we are. Okay, and then finally we take any equity that this company had, we put a minus on the equity that the target company, and then we say, well, we're going to issue all this new equity. Now what it might look like, because we put some goodwill on the balance sheet, it might look like we have a where is the new equity issues? So that's this plus, oops, new equity we issued to this Mr. Coletterman, and the new equity we issued to the public. He became fairly rich, I think. Now when you do all of this, it should all balance, and it doesn't. And you go, oh shit. And what's the difference? What did I not do? Okay. Usually I can kind of get it now. All we're doing is adding everything together. 55 million. What did I not do in the 55 million? Partly we increase current assets. Well, we should have put that into current assets as cash, put an equal on this one. Okay. And we're still off by 56 million exactly. Well, where's our 56 million? Oh, we have to put our new planes together. Okay, so we need to take this number, and I guess we can push this into our we should, I think it would have almost been better to make a new category for the new planes. I think I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to put new planes, new aircraft. That sounds better, doesn't it? And well, I think that would go into the kind of construction work in progress. They put it as a cash reserve account in order to buy the planes, but that's whatever. And now our balance sheet balances and our pro forma balance sheet balances. Okay, and then we can go to our merger model, and I think that last thing might screw me up a little bit, but then we can say here's the net plant we start with. Okay, and I have to be very, very careful, because I think I might have called that other thing CapEx. Okay, and let's go to the merger assumptions and just get the net plant right from the pro forma. Okay, can I just see where I put the CapEx? Excuse me. CapEx. Oh, and so this amount I took from the merger assumptions, that should be taken away, because we just put it in our net plans. Okay, and because we already financed that, we don't have to pay for that again. And we also, I have to be very careful. There's something called the restricted cash balance, I think. That one. Oh, I just left. That's good. I just left that. Okay, so I put a couple of other kind of yellow things in just to demonstrate that you take these things from the balance sheet. So the new notes, we'd go and take that from our balance sheet as well. Okay, and we would do the same thing for the term loan. F93, F222, I assume that comes from, oh, that came from this balance sheet. I should have taken it from the balance sheet upstairs, but whatever, you see the idea. Okay, and then finally, at the end of the day, the balance sheet still balances. You've gone through a whole kind of analysis. And then the real key is the here. Now, what the hell did I do here? But we can look. No, this is okay. So we can say, well, what happens if we have a low case? Then we can see what happens to our accretion and dilution. So if the blue one is the consolidated, the red one's the standalone. The red one could come from a standalone case. You might have to make a little bit of adjustment, but all these kind of scenarios that we did in the initial case should work. And the big issue was, what happens if this other company has a low case and then this company went bankrupt, which is what actually happened. If we had this really optimistic case, it would have done extremely well. Not surprisingly, they had a very highly geared, highly leveraged transaction. One other thing that I should have done right now is when you go to the credit statistics, a couple of things you could do is let's put pro forma consolidated EBITDA. Let's just say that's 100. Okay, I'm just pulling that kind of out. Now, the first thing we can do is compute our debt to capital, our debt to equity, and we go to the I suppose merger model, or we go to the transaction structure really, and we look at the debt here, which is this plus this, and let's divide that by the total capital. Now, I want to demonstrate to you that the assumption you make about the price, this share exchange price, this has a big effect on the debt to equity. If you have more goodwill, well, the assets go up, and my proposal is that this debt to equity ratio starts completely losing its any relevance and meaning. It's a high ratio. But if we would put in a very high ratio, okay, if we put in a spinner box here, okay, quickly, not to be too gimmicky or anything like that, but if we do this and we just change this and allow a different share price in the transaction, so let's put a minimum value, let's say 10 to 20 on the high side, 25, how's that? And of course you use your windscreen wiper technique, and you click on the 19, and you click OK. And then we put a little thing here, and we copy this to the transaction structure. Okay, and let's put our share price. Okay, and put an equal sign and go get our share price from here. Okay, if we put a higher share price, you notice that the debt to capital is going down. If it's a lower share price, we get a higher debt to capital. Now, a good piece of the share price is simply the assumed share price you used in allocating the shares. So in allocating the shares to this Mr. Coletta person, so that it's influenced just by that factor alone. You can see that hopefully it loses some meaning. Now, if we put the debt to EBITDA, we can find the total debt here. And we'll just take that from the sources and uses statement. Suppose you could argue whether you should add the debt fees and divide that by the EBITDA. And then you say, oh, it looks pretty good. It's only 3.8, only 4 times. But this debt to EBITDA is kind of, it depends on the interest rate, depends on the maintenance capital expenditures. It can be a very, very, very difficult, depends on the EBITDA being sustained. It can be a very, very difficult thing to say that this is a little more than 4 or 5 years because we have to pay interest would be very deceptive. Okay? And so that's a little bit of an introduction on how to construct the merger model. Now what we're going to do in the next one, if you're interested, suppose most people would have switched off the video a long time by now, but if you're interested in the next one, we're going to put together 2 companies. We're going to put a new case with a new kind of merger model and a new standalone model here. And it's probably going to be a little messy, but it's real world. Okay, so I'm going to call this one the completed exercise. And you can go, and if you have some crazy kind of why you'd ever do that, why you'd ever I don't know why that happened. You can do it yourself then. Okay? Bye.